Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today you are in for a treat. We are sitting down with Jimmy Daly, head of VP of Growth at the Animalz content marketing agency. And these guys are masters of their craft, but what's more is they are a remote first company. So in these precarious times, we are going to pick their brains about how they work and perform their best. So Jimmy, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
Good, thanks. Can you tell us a little bit about what is Animalz and what is your office setup?
Yeah, absolutely. So Animalz is a content marketing agency. We do content strategy and content creation for a pretty wide range of companies, a lot of B2B SaaS, some venture capitalists, a few tech companies, a few e-commerce companies. We work with, I don't know, 50 or 60, really some of the best brands in the space. We have a team of about 50 people. We might be 51 now. Those folks are spread out all over the world, primarily in the US, a few in Europe, a few kind of sprinkled around the rest of the world as well. Interestingly, it wasn't always that way. Animalz did not start as a remote company. That was something that happened about a year into the company. Which I'm happy to explain if that would
Please
be
do,
helpful
yeah.
in the spirit of this remote stuff. Yeah. When our founder Walter started the company, this was in the summer of 2015, I think. He wanted everyone in the office, and he wanted to create a space where, as he was building a team, it would be really easy to collaborate, to learn from each other, to be able to react really quickly to the new customers that the company was just bringing on board. And that actually worked really well for a while. And then at one point, one of the guys on the team, who still 5 years later is on the team, his wife had a job transfer out of New York City, which is where the office was. And he said, this is a great opportunity for her, and I obviously need to move with her, but I would love to stay at the company. Would you consider letting me work remotely? And after some debate, decided that was the right move. He was a great employee, someone that was doing great work, and we wanted to keep. And so that sort of spawned our remote first nature, which we've found to be great and still use today.
Well, awesome. And so, yeah, okay, we have just plowed through my first three questions.
Sorry.
You've done a really great job. No, this is awesome. So, I mean, how a lot of companies right now are struggling. So now a lot of companies are joining the remote work bandwagon, not so much out of their own initiative, but out of necessity. And a lot of them are running into obstacles. And one of those obstacles is the human connection of working remotely. And it's one thing for companies who have already had that chance in the office environment to forge those connections. But how have you done it with such a large portion of your company's existence being remote? How do you develop those connections and that empathy among team members?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely not always easy. I will say, for me personally, I've never found that to be a challenge. One of the reasons I enjoy working remotely is because I have lots of other interests in a very flexible schedule, which, remote work definitely allows for, makes it easy for me to get my work done and then get my human fix somewhere else, that said, I'm on calls like basically all day long. So you get a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of calls like this, not everyone is like that. You know what I mean? Some people crave it more than others. Everyone has sort of a different take on it. And so the way that we think about it is, well, there's a few things. When a new employee comes on board, they're assigned an onboarding buddy. And those two people have a lot of scheduled interaction over the first 8 or so weeks that new employee is at the company. So that's how we sort of kick things off with new folks. For everyone on the team, we do bi-weekly water cooler chats. So we have a Slack bot that randomly pairs people up. And the idea is that you spend 30 minutes just talking, getting to know each other. you can talk about work, but you don't have to. It's more like just to like get to know the other person. We also recently have instituted a few totally optional things for people to get involved with. So on Fridays, we do an hour of coloring and crafts. So people get together just to talk. Someone sends around like some kind of little art project that you can like print out and do at home. And people just sort of work on it while they chat about other things. We have
Is that during work hours or after?
that is during work hours. Yeah. Um, and then we also during work hours, we've done a few things for people who are like really, like big fans of a certain TV show. Like anyone who's a fan of that show might like get on the morning after an episode to like, just like digest it, chat about it, things like that. So I feel like we really try to empower people to, take the steps that they feel comfortable with and that they feel like will sort of give them that human interaction in a satisfying way without forcing it on people, because for some folks, they're pretty happy to just do their work and sign off. And so we try to be accommodating to everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a really good job at building in structured connection opportunities into a remote environment, which is really cool. And I hope that a lot of our viewers and listeners will get inspired by that. So,
Totally.
Yeah, no, I was going to say just quickly, like, I mean, even though I sort of flag myself as someone who doesn't need it, whenever I do those things, I'm always so grateful I did. Like just this morning, I had a water cooler chat. I was randomly assigned with another person on our team. We spent 30 minutes chatting. We found out that for 5 years, we lived in the same town and didn't even know it. Like that was just such a cool connection that I don't know that we would have ever made otherwise.
mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh, well, do you know this person? And did you ever go to that store? Like, what about that restaurant? Like it was really fun. And it was 30 minutes out of the day. It felt great. And it does in some way, like make it a little easier to like, then like refocus on work and be productive for the rest.
And also work together when you end up on a project together, then you already have that connection.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that you're on a lot of calls. A lot of companies now and individuals have discovered Zoom, which we are also using now. And a side effect that others have discovered is also Zoom fatigue. In fact, getting a little tired of those video call interactions. What do you guys use to call, and how do you combat this feeling if you're on these calls all day?
We also use Zoom. I think for most of the people on our team, of the 50 people on our team, probably 42 or 43 are dedicated content creators. And so the huge majority of their time is spent researching, writing, editing. And so they're not on Zoom calls all that often. And so I don't know that Zoom fatigue is a huge problem for that segment of the company. And then there's the customer facing folks who are on Zoom calls constantly. And that is like I fall into that bucket. Or like a big part of my job at Animalz is sales. So like I'm supposed to be on calls a lot. If I'm not on calls a lot, something's wrong, and in that case, at least the way that I think about it and the way that I've encouraged the other folks on our team to think about it is to really try to batch your calls. Maybe you do as many calls as you can in one afternoon or on one day, and then give yourself a whole day of no calls. Because I personally find that if I have 5 days a week sprinkled with calls and, a 30-minute break here, an hour break there, and then you can't get any work done, and it sucks a lot of energy out of you. And if you can batch those calls together, it makes it a lot easier to just dedicate that time to those calls and then dedicate your open blocks of time to whatever else it is you're working on.
That's a great tip. We've also tried implementing similar aspects, like only taking meetings on Fridays, which works to a certain point, but then
Well, it can definitely be challenging, like particularly in our case, if I'm trying to book calls with prospects or customers, I mean, we need to meet them on their turf usually. I can't tell them like my only open slot is Tuesdays at 3:00. It doesn't really work like that. And so we've tried a few things. Like we've tried tools like Calendly, or we use Front for email, and they also have a scheduling feature in that tool. And so we will try to create the blocks there so that people can book times. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It's uh, it's an ongoing challenge, to be very frank.
Yeah, I feel you there. But so let's dig into the sales element that you just touched on. Um, One part of, I guess, traditional sales or old school sales is traveling to meet that prospect and shaking their hand and looking them in the eye, which I feel a lot of classic business consultants and sales consultants will say, this is the key. But from what I take it, you're doing a lot of your sales remotely, digitally. How are your prospects finding that, who even in a pre-pandemic era were possibly used to in-person meetings?
It's so interesting. I don't have a sales background, but the way that we do sales at Animalz is it's very comfortable for me because it's essentially free consulting. If someone reaches out with a content problem, we say, hey, let's jump on a call. Like, we'll help you brainstorm that issue. And so it never really feels like sales. And I've been doing this now for, I don't know, 2.5 years or so. And never once has anyone requested that we come to their office and give them a presentation, or that we fly somewhere to meet to negotiate a deal. And I frankly am surprised by that. Like, people seem to be very comfortable doing this kind of thing on Zoom calls. I think partially because it's convenient, partially because like we get to see each other's faces, we get to know each other a little bit. And then I think also partially because as an agency, our growth hinges on our reputation. I think more so than software companies, for example. Like if a prospect of ours has heard a great recommendation from another customer, like they walk into these calls already feeling pretty good about it. Like there's a certain element of trust already built in. And I think that without that, in-person meetings would be helpful and maybe necessary. But because so many of our sales start with such a warm lead, we've never really required it. And I'm thankful for it because I'm definitely like somewhat of a homebody. Like I would much prefer to do my work at home so I can go focus on, spend my evenings and weekends doing other things, rather than sitting in airports and hotels and whatever.
Yeah, it's also a great place to be in when your agency warms the lead for you, your reputation.
Definitely.
No, I'm grateful to work with a team of people who are so good at their job. They make my life in sales a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Well, like they say, you can't market a bad product. So I bet it makes sales a lot easier.
Definitely.
So in the same vein of business partners and that digital remote aspect, how about hiring? How do you guys go about screening potential employees from a remote perspective?
Hiring is incredibly challenging. There's just no two ways about it. I could see that if we had an office, which we don't, that it could be useful to bring people in the final stages of interviews. We don't have an office. We don't do that. All of the screening and interviewing is done virtually. There's certainly, especially for the folks that we hire who are primarily content creators, there's some element of their work that is very easy to review remotely. For example, like we look for writing samples. That's best done asynchronously and remotely anyways. As we interview people, which we do on Zoom calls, like there's an element there that is lacking. It's not the same as sitting down and meeting someone in person and maybe getting a cup of coffee or getting lunch or whatever. But that's sort of just a challenge that we've embraced as a remote company. It would probably be cost prohibitive if we're trying to hire people in Europe to service our European customers and then be like flying people back and forth to New York or wherever to do interviews.
Some companies do that.
Yeah.
I can understand why. I mean, luckily we haven't needed to yet. but like I said, hiring is a constant challenge. Like I don't know that maybe some companies have figured it out and it's become easy. We haven't gotten there yet. It's always challenging, and we're also always hiring because we have to hire as an agency. We have to hire just a little bit ahead of growth to make sure that we have the capacity in our team to do the work as we bring on new customers. So we're sort of always balancing, like, what is the sales pipeline looking like? How many deals do we think will close in the next month or two, so that our people ops team can make their plans for hiring, so that alone is challenging. The remote thing does help us move more quickly, I think, though. Instead of waiting for someone to fly to wherever to do an interview, we can do it the next day on Zoom.
Yeah, and you're not limited to a local talent pool either.
Definitely.
Do you find that now in this kind of murky employment situation that a lot of people are in, that it's an opportunity to snatch up some good employees, or is that something that's kind of on the back burner for you now?
I think I hope that we can take advantage of that in the next month or two. So like a lot of companies, we froze hiring right away. And I will be easing the restriction pretty soon. This pandemic has been challenging for our business, like it has been for a lot of businesses.
A lot of agencies have been hit hard, particularly.
Definitely. And also as a company with a big payroll, we have a team of people that service the customers. There's no software, so if the customer base contracts, the employee base also has to contract. So far, we're recording this in the middle of May or so. We haven't had to make any layoffs. We've retained the huge majority of our customers. Sales are actually looking pretty good. And so I hope that, like, as we get later into May and into June, we can start, snagging some really good talent, folks who worked at companies who weren't fortunate enough to fare quite as well, and hopefully we can benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are some industries that look like they won't be back on their feet anytime soon. If we look at travel and airlines and whatnot, so I feel like there's a lot of great content or talent coming out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
So with your team spread out, how do you manage expectations towards work put in? When working remotely, there often aren't many ways to kind of check if people are working, and there's some people who are very diligent and others who maybe are more leaning towards taking advantage of the opportunity to take a Friday off or something like that. So how do you control this, or do you control it, or do you have any metrics? How do you go about getting stuff done?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's two primary ways we look at this. I guess three. The first is that we just try to hire great people who this is not going to be an issue with, and that can be a little hard to suss out in the hiring process, but that would be the first thing. The second thing would be that everyone works as part of a smaller team. And so most of the calls that you would need to be on are with your pod of people that might be like 5, 6, 7 people. And so like that smaller group of people is responsible for finding overlap in time zones so that they can meet and collaborate when it works for that group of people. We do try to batch people together so that someone in California isn't always trying to set meetings with someone in London. Like that is just challenging. So we try to be flexible about that so that it will be easy for people to meet and collaborate in real time. The third thing is we understand the unit economics of our business pretty well. And so we know exactly how much output to expect from an individual employee on a weekly and monthly basis. So it's pretty easy to tell, like, we don't really care if you work 9 to 5 or nights, or if you prefer to work at night or you want to take a break during the day. Like, for some of our folks, we have a couple folks in Europe, and I know that one woman in Barcelona will often get up, work for a few hours in the morning before all of us in the US are working. Then she'll take a nice long break. She'll go to the gym, she'll go grocery shopping, she'll do whatever she needs to do, and then she'll be back to sync up with the rest of the team when we get online. And that's great. Like whatever is going to work for her lifestyle. And if she can, probably actually makes it easier for her to get her work done when we're not around anyways. that's totally fine. And so we do, we have a spreadsheet where we keep track of everyone's output, and that gives us a pretty good idea of what they're working with. And almost always, I would say like 95% of the time, if we see someone's output drop, it's not because they're slacking off. It's because they've bumped into some challenge with the project that they're working on, and maybe there's some constraint with the customer that needs to be addressed, right? Or maybe they've just hit a roadblock for some reason. And like almost always that's the case when work slows down, and then we can jump in and try to help them figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, sounds very straightforward if you're able to measure in output.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's good I definitely would say that if you can find a meaningful way to measure your team's output, then you should do it. And if their output is dropping, almost always, it's not worth assuming that they're slacking off. You know what I mean? Like people are generally inclined to do great work, and they want to meet whatever output requirements are set for them. And sometimes they just need help getting roadblocks pulled out of their way.
And do you account for maybe a newer team member versus a more senior team member who might be able to churn out some content faster than someone who's just learning the ropes?
Definitely. For new employees, the expectations for their work are completely different, and there is a plan to get them onboarded over 6 or 8 weeks. There are, we might ask them for the first few weeks to just do a single article a week if they're a content creator, and that gives them time to learn the tools, learn the process, meet the editors, schedule time to meet with the customer and get to know them. Like there's a lot of things that need to happen for a writer to have enough context to work quickly. It's really hard to work quickly if you don't have all the things you need ready to go when it's time to write.
Right. Yeah.
And so we try to give people lots of time and space to do that. And even for our most experienced writers, 2 to 3 articles a week is the most that we'll ask, because there's so many other things that go into the job. There's reporting, there's account management, there's team meetings, there's lots of other things going on. And so we try to build the plans that we sell to be structured in a way that allows people time and space to do really good work.
Yeah. Sounds logical. So a lot of the classical selling points for really rad companies is having that hip office with the ping pong table and the beer on tap and whatnot. And that's one of the aspects that they use to attract the best of the best. And since you guys are also competing for the best of the best, how do you differentiate yourself?
That's a great question. Particularly in the space that we work in, there's a lot of software companies that can offer really amazing perks. And a lot of that stuff does come from an office. Like my brother, for example, works at Google, and not right now, they're working from home, but normally they have access to, multiple restaurants and cafeterias on campus. They have an awesome gym. You can get a haircut in the office. Like there's all these things that we just we cannot offer. So our pitch is a flexible schedule to spend time with your family, loved ones, so that you can put time into the other things in your life that are of interest to you. Healthcare, we try to make sure, we do make sure that we have a good healthcare plan so that that's taken care of. And then the third and really among the most important things that we offer is development. If you're a writer or a content marketer and you want to develop quickly, working with a team of really experienced content marketers and editors is a great way to experience really rapid growth. And that's huge. Like we want Animalz to be a place where you can develop a great career in this industry. And that is a core part of the pitch that we make to anyone who might be considering working here.
Do you see that backfiring at all with a higher turnover rate with employees who might be coming to kind of really up their skills and then migrate to a different posting?
That's interesting. I don't think so. And one of the reasons I don't think so is that because we have created opportunities internally for content marketers to take on new roles. So, of the people that run our sales, our marketing, our people ops, all of our strategists, even the folks who do our accounting, all of them were content marketers, and they got in and they got to understand our business, and they expressed interest in these various and very necessary parts of animals, and got to have some exposure working on those things. And so, and then many people, they want to be a writer and they want to be an individual contributor, and that's awesome as well. So like we do try to hire from within, to promote people from within, to give people the chance to work on new and different things. Like, I mean, I've been a content marketer for years and never thought I would ever be working in sales, but here I am selling the thing that I spent a lot of years working on. And it's kind of the same thing for the folks who do our marketing and who hire content marketers, et cetera. And I think that's been great. I don't want to speak for our team because everyone's had their own individual experience, but I think that, for folks who want the remote experience, they're bought into that ahead of time. Like, I don't know that we talk to many people in the hiring process who are debating between working remotely or commuting to an office. I think that most of the folks that we interview and that we hire are pretty committed to the remote lifestyle ahead of time. And so our pitch is not trying to convince them that remote is good. It's trying to pitch them on a few very specific things that animals can offer them.
Yeah, and that they're already set on.
Exactly.
So far we've been talking a lot about the business side of things and remote life and just kind of functioning as a team. How about we quickly switch to the marketing side of what you do in content marketing? And so right now we're in the middle of this pandemic. A lot of companies are seeing dips in their profits. And so my question for you would be, is there any go-to strategy that you're suggesting for your clients to take advantage of to combat this in any way?
There's a few things that we've seen. There was an initial period of just an enormous amount of uncertainty. We really just had no idea. And so we were looking at every prospect and every customer on a completely individual basis, and so like as the pandemic became very real, we scheduled time with every single customer to try to understand what's going on in your specific business, because some of our customers, their businesses were really affected in a bad way by this. Some of our customers' businesses have been affected in a positive way. They're seeing increased demand because of whatever product or service they offer. And some people are in the middle. And so we realized quickly that there was just no blanket approach to this. We needed to talk to every customer individually and work with them to create a plan for it. Same thing in the sales process. We just assume that the same thing, we don't know your business. We need to understand your business. And then we'll make very, very personalized recommendations based on whatever it is we learn. For a lot of customers, retention was the most important thing. That was top of mind. And that was true for us too, also. They wanted to,
hence those personalized calls.
Exactly. And so, like customers, for example, would say things like, our product can help our customers save money. And we want to use content as a channel to make sure they understand all of the full feature set of our product, because if they're only utilizing 50% of it, they're at a significant risk of churn. But if they're utilizing 80% of it, they're actually going to save money and it becomes really useful to them. So we did a lot of product marketing via content so that people could talk directly about the products and how it helps right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also seeing a lot of companies kind of dialing back on their advertising budgets and really pushing the content, because advertising right now and like hard sales, like the pushy kind of funnels, seem a little gauche and insensitive at the moment.
I agree, totally.
So it feels like this is, if there is ever a time for content marketing, it's now.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that, because there was, during that like really intense period of uncertainty when this was first getting started, there was this wave of sentiment among our customers that like, we don't want to be promotional. We don't want to push stuff. Like, we don't want to push our product. Like, now is a time to just try to be there for people, educate if we can, but not be in their face. And then it was only a week or two later before some of these customers started saying like, you know what, we actually have to sell. Like we can't, if we don't sell, our business is not going to exist. You know what I mean? So we need to find ways to very tactfully continue selling our product. And that presented a number of challenges, each of which was addressed on like a totally individual basis with that company. And we saw that with our business as well. It's not good enough to say like, we'll just be quiet for a little while until this blows over. Like we wanted to be on the forefront. We wanted to be not loud, but we wanted to be active. So for anyone who was trying to figure out what they should be doing with their content marketing, that they would have a place to go to at least, learn what we're doing with our customers or how we're handling marketing for our own business. Yeah, it's just like as I'm like saying, it's like, I'm realizing like how insane the last couple of months have been. Like it really has just been crazy.
It really has. And I think that your insights are super valuable in terms of very timely reactions and suggestions. And so where can our viewers hear more of your input and learn from you guys and Animalz?
Yeah, animalz.co has our blog and our podcast and our newsletter. All that stuff's available there. If I could point people to anything specific, there was a few live podcasts that we recorded where we interviewed a few other companies, and you can learn about what their experience has been like through this and how they've adjusted. And I found those conversations to be really valuable because one thing I found was that all of the challenges that Animalz was having felt totally unique. Like they were like no one else had ever experienced these problems. And then as you get to talking to people, it's like, oh, everybody has these problems right now, And so like listening to other people talk about how their own marketing teams have reacted and, how they're adjusting their plans, et cetera, hugely valuable. So there's a couple of those. Those are our most recent podcasts. And I would probably point people to those as good resources right now.
Yeah, I also highly recommend the podcast to everyone who's listening. It's really a great resource. I absolutely adore it. So that concludes all of my questions. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know?
Well, Animalz is a great content agency. So if you need content strategy or content creation, let us know. Happy to talk. Like I said, our sales process is basically just free consulting, so if you have a content challenge and you want to talk about it, we're not going to push stuff on you. We love talking about it. We can tell you what our 50 or 60 other customers are doing, because I can almost guarantee we've seen these problems before and implemented solutions and seen what those results are like, and happy to talk folks through that if it would be helpful. Great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It means the world. This concludes our first remote interview. So as the world is adjusting, so are we here at the Desktime YouTube channel. So thank you so much for being our first guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Julia.
Okay. All right. Well then, until next time.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks.